Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Now, this is kind of a video that I wanted to make for literally like 2-3 years now, and I never got the opportunity to do it until recently. Now, this video might look better than the usual ones I make, so don't get used to it because my videos will go back to the worst quality ones that they always are. But today we're going to be taking a look at the MacBook Air 13-inch, the 2015 model. Now, I am aware there's the 11-inch model as well, but this is one of the last MacBooks that came out that kind of look like this. We do have the newer MacBook Air, the Retina one that came out I think in 2018, but this is not that one. This one surprisingly is the older one, but also surprisingly from some other videos that I've seen, this is actually one of the best selling MacBooks on Amazon currently, which is so surprising to me, the fact that people are still buying this. Now, one reason why I think that is because people see the MacBook Air line, and because there was so much marketing behind that lineup. People are so used to seeing that and they know it's quality. They see Apple and they also see that's a cheaper price tag, so it's like, dude, we have to go and buy it. But at the same time, I mean, don't they know better? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And honestly, this MacBook has held up quite well, I mean, in terms of the body, it doesn't look like a new laptop anymore for sure. There's definitely some weird things going on with it, but I think the way it feels and the way it looks and everything, it still feels like a top tier machine. And looking on the top of the machine, you already know we have that Apple logo. Now this one does light up as opposed to the newer models that we have, and none of those logos light up, which some people might care about, some people might not. Me personally, I'm like in the middle. I don't really care. I have, newer Retina MacBooks, I have older Retina MacBooks, I have this MacBook Air. I really don't care about it at this point. It's just one, nobody's ever looking at the back of the MacBook, you know what I mean? Everyone's looking at the front and the keyboard. I don't really care what the rest of the body looks like, to be honest. Now, when you do swivel this thing up, you have that nice 13.3 inch panel, and I say nice very loosely because it's not that good of a panel, and that is probably one of the biggest disadvantages with this panel, but not only this panel, but with every single MacBook Air that came out before the Retina one, and that was one of the biggest differentiating factors going to a newer MacBook from the old one, because they were like, should I get the MacBook Pro, should I get the MacBook Pro Retina, or should I get the MacBook Air? And all those different models had a different thing within them. And talking about those specific ones, the MacBook Pros and even the MacBook Pro Retinas and the MacBook Airs, people were like, if you want portability and all that stuff, get the MacBook Air. But if you don't mind sacrificing some portability, get the MacBook Pro Retina. Those ones are going to get you more power and also just a better screen overall. And I 100% agree with that. This panel is one of those things that have not held up that well throughout the time of this device's ownership. And the fact that they released this panel with this time, they actually, made some improvements here and there throughout the years. That I think it came out the first time in 2008 or 2009, and it has slowly got updates slowly throughout the time. The fact that this was the last one of that iteration in that design is pretty insane. I feel like they could have done a much better job with this display over time. Now, that's enough of me hating on the display. I'll probably hate on it later, a little bit more later on. Now, you have that big keyboard, which is something I really do like. This was that older style keyboard, not the butterfly ones, but that older style, and this one was really nice. I really like this keyboard a lot. There's a lot of click to it, a lot of whatever to it. A lot of people say travel, and it might be the case. This might have a lot of travel. I really don't care. But this one felt a lot better than my butterfly keyboards that I had on my 2016, 2017, and 2018 MacBook Retinas. That's why I still use a 2015 MacBook Pro Retina, because I like that older keyboard and I like the ports. And you also have that trackpad at the bottom. Now, it's not a force touch trackpad, it's still that physical clicking button that you have to click, but it's not that big of a deal. I think a lot of people are okay with it now, especially. It's gotten over through time, and for the majority of people, that might be one of those issues where you like it or you don't mind it, you know what I mean? Or you don't hate it for that most part. And for me, the trackpad on this thing really wasn't that bad. And on the bottom, you can see you have the screw ports and all that stuff, the random back. Now, in terms of the port selection, this is where things get a little bit different. So you have 2 USB ports on this thing. So you have the MagSafe connector, which is really cool. I love that older style MagSafe. Those newer ones I don't really like, where it's just, you plug in the USB-C port and that's it. I did really like this older MagSafe. It's magnetic. If you trip over it, if you hit it by accident, it's going to fall out perfectly fine, you know what I mean? You also have that USB Type 3 port, no USB-C, keep that in mind, and then a headphone jack on the left side. And on the right side, you had a Thunderbolt port, which is really cool. You had another USB port, and then you also had that SD card, which, in my opinion, that SD card slot is one of the key things. That's one thing that I use on a daily basis. That USB port I could probably get over with. The MagSafe I could probably get over with too, it's not a big deal. and especially that Thunderbolt port, I don't really care. That SD card slot is so important to me because I'm constantly making videos. I'm constantly taking my SD card out of my Canon and putting it into my MacBook or putting it into my iMac. That's something that I like using, and I like having that availability of that. And the fact that Apple took that out of the 2016 MacBooks and never put that back in is something I never really did like. But you have that capability on this older MacBook, which in my opinion is one of the key things about this MacBook that I love. It's not an everyday thing. Maybe a majority of you won't really like it or won't really mind it for that matter. But if you're somebody who constantly likes having those ports and constantly likes putting things in and out of their MacBooks and having, a lot of IO options, on an older MacBook like this, you're getting much better sufficiency when it comes down to those ports rather than a newer MacBook like that MacBook Retina or even that 16-inch MacBook, which is kind of crazy. You have more ports on this thing than that thing, and in my opinion, I would way rather have an SD card slot than, multiple more USB-C ports. I understand you can use dongles and everything, but that in and of itself is one of the most important things about this device for sure. So in terms of the ports, you're definitely going to be set. I wouldn't even worry about it in terms of too much, but for the most part, that really pretty much covers it up on the outside. Now, the way it feels and everything in the hand, it still feels like a very good device. I understand this is a 2015 one and it's like 5 years old at this point. And I'll be honest, comparing it to like the 16-inch MacBooks and feeling them in the hand or even the 13 inches, yeah, there's some difference here and there, but they feel pretty much the same. There's still some good heft to them. When you're picking them up, putting them down, the hinge is still very nice. Throughout the years that we've owned it, it still opens and closes just fine. It's still perfectly fine for the majority of things you're going to do with it in terms of the body standpoint. However, in terms of the performance standpoint, this is where things get a little weird. Okay, so the software I was running with, it was High Sierra. I didn't really want to put Mojave on her, and especially not Catalina, because that was I've heard some really bad stories about Catalina, and I've had really bad issues with that too. My 2012 MacBook, for example, it handled it really bad. My 2015 MacBook I ran on, which was my main device, I had a horrible experience with it, and I had to delete all my memory when I had to go back. So MacBook Air, I'm sticking with High Sierra for now. And in terms of the performance, what I can tell you is that, it's pretty slow as what you expect. It's definitely not the fastest thing in the world, and it's definitely not even a fast thing for being a 2015 device. Now, lucky for us, that thing does have an SSD, which is really impressive. I was not expecting this MacBook to have an SSD, and I didn't even know it had one until I went in to get it fixed one time with somebody, and I actually found out that it didn't have a hard drive. It actually had an SSD, which was pretty impressive. For a device like this that's this old, even my 2015 13-inch MacBook Pro didn't even have an SSD when I bought it, and I bought another MacBook Pro 15-inch that I think had a hard drive, and I had to put an SSD in it or something like that, I don't remember. But moral of the story is, for sure, at the end of the day, the performance on this thing just really isn't that good as it used to be. It's a dual-core CPU. You can turbo boost up to 2.7 gigahertz. There's two different options, either having that 4 gig of RAM option or that 8 gig. On my specific model, I do have 8 gigs, and that's the top that you can get is 8 gigabytes, which is insane. That is a super small amount of RAM to have on a device like this. I mean, our phones, there's a lot of, my Samsung Galaxy S20 has 12 gigabytes of RAM in it, and there's a lot of devices out there that have a lot more than that. My current main device, which is my iMac, has 24 gigs. Even my MacBook Pro 15-inch that I use as a side MacBook whenever I go places, that has 16, and I can't even imagine going below 16 gigabytes, to be honest. I would highly recommend you, if you have the option, go for a much higher RAM option. I mean, 8 gigabytes in 2020 will be good for a majority of you if you're a student, if you're somebody who just wants to go and use a MacBook as a side and you don't use any like super intensive apps, if you're not a coder, if you're not anybody like. Now, you can still do it if you're those things, like if you're a super intensive user, but I do believe you're going to have apps that are running out of performance and just not having an overall great experience overall. So if you're somebody who plans on using this MacBook as like a main device, as super intensive this and that in gaming, obviously you're not going to do super intensive gaming on this thing, but don't expect it to be like a crazy performing MacBook. Even though it's a MacBook, even though it should be, pretty smooth overall, it doesn't really have too many background process and all that, you should still expect it to, give you pretty much below average performance, especially now in 2020. However, don't let that being a deterrent factor for you. This thing has a tremendous battery life. The 2015 MacBook Air especially, for some reason in my opinion, has some of the best battery life I've ever seen on any MacBook, especially that I've owned. And for this specific device, it has great standby time, it has pretty good battery life overall, and I attribute that to basically two things. One, performance is pretty low. Battery is pretty big too. And the third thing, which I know I said two things, but the third thing, the screen is super low resolution, you know what I mean? It's not like a Retina display. And because of that, one of its main advantages is getting better battery life at the end of the day, which is really, really nice. So to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you still pick up the 2015 MacBook Air in 2020? What I will tell you is, I think there is a place and time for this MacBook. I think for some people out there, it might be worth it. It might be worth it to go pick this thing up because of its price. You can get it on Amazon right now for about $750, which you might think is pretty cheap for a MacBook, and I'm right there with you. I think that's a pretty good price. But I still think you can do a little bit better in the used market with $750. I've personally purchased like 13-inch MacBooks from 2017 for like $750, and I think that's a pretty decent deal, but you have to remember those do have those keyboard issues. A MacBook like this, you're not necessarily going to have those, and there's still a lot of cool things going for this MacBook. So if you're okay with the lower performance and everything, it's not a bad MacBook. It's still going to give you some life, and you're going to still get some software updates out of it too, which is really cool. So if you want to pick up this MacBook Air, I'll leave a link down in the description so you can pick it up from Amazon and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.